one. Working on the wall.
It's a little-known fact that for 1 week every summer, Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, becomes the busiest airport on the face of the earth in terms of flight operations. That's because the airport is home to the largest annual aviation event in the Western Hemisphere, the Experimental Aircraft Association's EAA AirVenture Oshkosh. If it flies, it's here. Each year, as many as 10,000 aircraft descend on this place. The airplanes are usually the stars of the show, but not this year. This year, the American aviation community has decided to use its largest event and its biggest megaphone to simply and sincerely say thank you to America's military veterans. As a result, thousands of veterans and their families are here. Jim Sursley from Florida returned from his service in Vietnam, a triple amputee.
Well, very fond memories of growing up in Rochester, Minnesota. Great town, great place to be a kid. Spent a lot of time playing Little League baseball, basketball, football, all those kind of things. Had a large family. Always looked forward to Thanksgiving dinners, Christmases together, that type of thing, and just sharing our life together. Well, I joined the Army to be a wheeled vehicle mechanic, to work on Jeeps and trucks. The second advanced individual training I took at Fort Sill was for self-propelled tracks and howitzers, tanks and armored personnel carriers, to do the maintenance work on those. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't much of a garrison soldier. It wasn't what I joined the Army to do. I felt like I wanted to make a stronger contribution than of what I was doing with the 24th Infantry Division in Germany. And because of that, I went down and talked to the first sergeant and said, Top, I'd like to volunteer to go to Vietnam. I've given this a lot of thought. I've talked to a lot of the guys that are in the unit that have come back from Vietnam, and it's truly something I think I want to do.
Jim Sursley served as a mechanic and machine gunner on an armored personnel carrier with the 17th Armored Cavalry, 196th Light Infantry of the Americal Division. After 4 months in country, his leadership qualities brought him a promotion to vehicle commander and squad leader.
I was honored to be selected to have that position. I enjoyed what I was doing, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend any more tours in Vietnam with what we were experiencing at that time. I did truly enjoy the military and love the life.
10 months into Sursley's tour, everything changed for him.
And I mean, it was a routine day like many others that we had a daily operation, search and clear, sweeping villages to make sure that they were clean of either NVA or Viet Cong looking for weapons, that type of thing. And as it got on towards evening, we were looking to pick a night logger position where we could set up for the night, stay there overnight, and then continue operations the next morning. When I came off the track, I went out to get some equipment on the perimeter of the area we set up on and stepped on a landmine. Turned out to be estimated at about 25 pounds of TNT. It traumatically amputated both of my legs and my left arm. I got on the dust-off helicopter and went to the hospital just about like you see me now. The amazing thing about what happened that day was it was an all-powder explosion. There was no shrapnel to it whatsoever. It was not contained or encased in metal. That ball of flame cauterized my arteries and kept me from bleeding to death. Never lost another drop of blood from the explosion on, and laid there on my back while the medic worked on me and never lost consciousness. Actually carried on a conversation with our medic before the dust-off helicopter got there. I don't remember much of the helicopter flight from the explosion on. I remember getting to the 95th Evac Hospital when I first got there. It was a very quiet day. There was no need to triage me because they had plenty of staff available to work on me. I came in and out of consciousness during that 3-day period of time while I was there because I had troops from my outfit came up to visit, and I remember the conversations I had with them. Nobody came up and felt sorry for you. I mean, even 24, 48 hours after my injury, I actually had guys come up and say, "Sursley, you look like crap," I mean, that's just the way Vietnam veterans treated each other. That was the nicest greeting you could ever get if they addressed you in that manner. So just the fact that they were there to come and visit, know that you were severely injured and you were going to move on to someplace else was a real heartfelt expression on their part, and it was taken that way too.
We're going to hit on by the number 3 engine back here, and there's a gas tank in there, caught fire, and Steve King, the pilot, is telling us to bail out, the plane is going down. I was hooked up to the electrical supply for my electrically heated suit, and I had my headset on, so I had to disconnect those things. I got down here on this little deck which is right under the pilot's seats here above. And I started to debate with myself about what I was going to do. We'd been given the bailout order, and I was thinking it over, but you only didn't have much time to do that. And you're going to do what? You're going to jump out now and let myself fall forward out this way. The plane blew up. One of the gunners was killed, but the rest of us were out of there. We were scattered. The people jumped out at various times, and as I said, 2 guys landed in the wrong place, fell into the hands of civilians who killed them. And Miller, the pilot, co-pilot, was shot to death with his parachute. I just landed in the spot where it happened to be a suburban area, right across the street from a military hospital, and I could see the German soldiers leaning out the window. They're watching me come down.
Well,
I get down, and what you were supposed to do, you're supposed to hide your parachute. Well, so I hid my parachute. They're all watching me. And 2 soldiers drive up in a car, and they had their pistols out, and I put my hands up. The war was over for me at that point. We were there at the Great Escape Camp for 6 months. I got there 3 months after the Great Escape occurred. So there was talk about it, but we didn't know it by that name. All we knew, though, was they shot 50 officers for trying to escape. And there was no way to get out because, as the Great Escape proved, the only 3 guys out of the 76 that got out of the tunnel in the Great Escape escaped and got away, and they were Europeans, every one of them, 2 Norwegians and a Dutchman. I'm glad that I had a chance to fight for my country. I'm glad that I took the chances that I did. I was a foolish kid. I wanted to fly. I wanted to be in combat. I changed my mind when I got there. And as I realized that the enemy is shooting back at you with real bullets. But the point is, I think that I'm glad for what I was able to do. I would do it again.
When they were just 19 years old, Don Casey and Jack Sinise met in U.S. Army Air Corps Navigators School in Pyote, Texas. They were deployed to Europe together with the 379th Bomb Group in February of 1944. When Jack Sinise was removed from his airplane to be trained as a lead navigator, Don Casey took his place. On June 18, 1944, Don was on a mission deep into Germany. It was his 2nd mission in Jack's airplane and his 28th combat mission overall. Soon after leaving the target area, Don's plane was shot down and he and 4 of his crewmates became prisoners of war in Germany. Jack Sinise is the uncle of actor-director Gary Sinise. Jack completed 30 combat missions over Europe as a navigator in a B-17 Flying Fortress. Gary has been a strong supporter of veterans' causes, and his Lieutenant Dan Band has performed in USO shows at military bases all over the world. EAA Air Venture, North America's largest aviation gathering. Friends since Navigator School, Jack Sinise and Don Casey traveled together to Oshkosh.
I'm really glad that Don became a part of this because he was a big part. And as far as our time in the service and so forth. So I'm really glad that he came along, even though he blames me for his little escapade.
You have to understand that navigators got no respect flying combat. We were the Rodney Dangerfields of the air crew because nobody knew what we did. We just sat there with our thinking caps on and we figured it all out.
For the nearly 500,000 attendees of this granddaddy of all air shows, it's a chance to say thank you to all of those who have served in harm's way. For the veterans and their families, it was a week of celebration, recognition, and remembrance.
It means a lot. I don't, it's hard to explain, it's in your heart, but to see all the veterans and think about all those that can't be here. So I sure appreciate everything they're doing for the rest of us that are left.
In 1953, a small group of aviation enthusiasts met in Hales Corners, Wisconsin. Under the leadership of Paul Poberezny, they formed the Experimental Aircraft Association to promote designing, building, and flying their own aircraft. Today, EAA boasts 150,000 members in more than 1,000 local chapters around the world. Over the years, the organization has expanded its mission to include antiques, classics, warbirds, aerobatic aircraft, ultralights, helicopters, and contemporary manufactured aircraft.
Our core audience are the craftsman audience, people that build and restore their own airplanes, but also we engage all pilots, people that fly all types of airplanes, and of course the enthusiasts. And within the context of people who fly airplanes are those who preserve the heritage of the military, the airplanes that preserved our freedom through all the different years from World War II to Korea and Vietnam and so forth. So their motto is keep them flying. And of course that's very important, but within that context it's also to remember the people that were an important part of them in terms of designing, maintaining them, and of course the pilots who flew them in conflict and battle. And for many of our veterans from World War II, they're not going to be with us much longer. And it's very self-satisfying to know that they know how much we appreciate what they've done.
Although the United States entered the First World War just 6 months before it ended, that war claimed the lives of nearly 120,000 American servicemen and women. An unthinkable 204,000 Americans were wounded in that conflict. In the aftermath of the war, the nation struggled with, and often failed to meet, the needs of its disabled veterans.
Well, the Disabled American Veterans were chartered by Congress back in the 1920s, and the need was identified by a group of people who decided to start the DAV because World War I veterans' needs and problems were not being addressed by the government. And so it's just moved through history, through the World War II veterans right up to the present time today. The DAV has 270 National Service Officers in 67 offices throughout the United States and Puerto Rico, where all you have to do is call them on the phone, stop into that office. Those individuals are going to help you with your specific needs for a claim for benefits to make sure you get everything you so rightly deserve based on your service to our country. Obviously, the country has become more aware of our veterans and more aware of reaching out and saying thank you to those that serve, whether it be the current day veteran or veterans in general. And so to come here and be a part of this, be a part of last night's celebration of Salute to Veterans, from listening to a World War II guy, a Tuskegee Airman, myself from Vietnam, people from Desert Storm, from Iraq and Afghanistan, and flyers and ground soldiers and everything else. I mean, it's an incredible outpouring of feeling and emotion for this air show to say to our veterans, we want to salute you, we want to say thank you. And I couldn't be more pleased to be a part of it and represent the DAV at this event.
One of the most visible representatives of the DAV at the Oshkosh Veterans Tribute was Ponchito, a meticulously restored North American B-25J Mitchell bomber owned by Larry Kelly. Since 2003, Ponchito has been flying to air shows around the United States in service to disabled veterans as the centerpiece of the Disabled American Veterans Outreach Program.
All the time we're here, we're going to be telling the message of what the DAV does for disabled veterans. And then we're going to be flying in the air show, which gives us, the announcer to the crowds, 500,000 people, during the air shows. Friday night, the concert, Gary Sinise is coming out here again, getting the name, the recognition of the DAV out to the entire audience, the air show audience, this blinding flash of the obvious audience that we needed to be reaching out to with the Aviation Outreach Program.
Another little known fact, every year at this event, visitors will see the largest collection of World War II aircraft on one airfield since that war ended. The Warbirds are a huge attraction. B-25s like Larry Kelly's are superstars among these aviation and history enthusiasts. The North American B-25 Mitchell medium bomber first achieved fame in April of 1942. It was 4 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States into World War II. Colonel James Doolittle led 16 B-25s on a bombing raid to Japan. Launched from the aircraft carrier Hornet, the Doolittle raid shattered the Japanese belief in their island's invulnerability, and it gave a much-needed boost to American morale. It made the B-25 an American defense icon. The B-25 was named for General Billy Mitchell, the visionary who proved the value of aerial bombing and strategic air power. It is the only American military aircraft named after a person. Ordered by the Army in 1939, the B-25 went straight from the drawing board to production. Modifications were made on the production line or at field stations around the world. The B-25 served in every theater of World War II, and it continued to serve with many foreign forces over a 40-year span. Larry Kelly's Panchito is a B-25J, the last production model. The original Panchito served with the 41st Bomb Group in the Central Pacific in World War II, hitting targets in southern Japan and eastern China. A solid-nose version of the B-25J was built for strafing ground targets. Armed with 3,000 pounds of bombs, 8 rockets, 10 forward-firing machine guns, and a 75mm cannon, B-25 sank thousands of tons of Japanese Navy and merchant shipping. Nearly 10,000 B-25s were built, including 4,300 J models. Today, more than 100 B-25s survive, most of them on static display in museums. About 45 B-25s are still airworthy. It takes huge amounts of time, resources, and dedication to restore a 60-year-old B-25, or any vintage airplane, and to keep it flying.
I'm asked many times why I do this, why I spend so much time trying to keep this old vintage airplane flying. I guess I'm a student of history. I read a lot. I realize where the world is today and how it got here. It got here on the backs of the veterans, the American veteran. And these airplanes, these airplanes were the tools of the trade. But the airplanes didn't win the wars. The airplanes didn't win the battles. It was the aviators. It was the men on the ground that kept them going. It was the aviators in the air that put themselves in harm's way day after day that won the wars. During World War II, if we had not had this total effort of putting me in, coach, regardless, we'd been in a different place today. So why do I do it? I have a tremendous respect for those veterans that put themselves in harm's way. I'm not a veteran. I'd like to try to think that I'm doing a little bit now to help with recognition of what veterans have done for this country and helping tell that story.
Without people like Larry Kelly, that story might never be told. These airplanes that defended the nation are as much a part of our heritage as our Civil War battlefields or our national parks. But there is no federal custodian of them. They are here because private individuals have salvaged and restored them. Their organization is also a part of the Experimental Aircraft Association. It is called the Warbirds of America, and it is the third sponsor of this Veterans Tribute. During World War II, America built 294,000 aircraft for the war. 21,000 were lost to training or ferrying accidents. 44,000 were lost in combat operations overseas. At the end of the war, nearly 120,000 U.S. military aircraft were declared surplus. 34,000 surplus aircraft, mostly trainers and transports, were sold to private or corporate owners at bargain prices. The vast majority, including nearly all of the fighters and bombers, were sold for scrap and melted down for their metals. Most of the surviving warbirds from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Cold War are in museums, permanently grounded. But a small community of museums and private owners are restoring, maintaining, and flying these aircraft as examples of living history.
Keep 'em Flying is of the core of EAA Warbirds of America, to share these aircraft in their element, in flight, in front of people, flying in formations, flying in aerobatic routines, reenacting significant parts of history where people can feel that direct connection with the aircraft, with the pilot, with the sights and sounds of a warbird in flight.
These airplanes weren't designed to be flying now. These airplanes were designed to serve this country in the 1940s. Were designed to just basically a purpose. And here we are, 2010, they're still flying. And it's a tribute to those who have invested the time, the resources, and the love and the passion. If the private community, the private sector had not done this, these airplanes would be gone. What you'd have is a few airplanes preserved in National Air and Space Museum and other places. I think we're all fortunate that people are willing to do that, to preserve the legacy of an important part of our history, an important part of the aviation history.
In a very real sense, these aircraft have been sanctified by those who flew them in harm's way. 4 generations of Americans, literally millions of us, are connected to these airplanes through our fathers, our uncles, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, and our mothers and grandmothers who built them. In a sense, they are living heirlooms of our American family.
But the salute to veterans at Oshkosh was more than just warbirds.
The parade, the special tribute, the dedications, every day there was something that kept the theme visible and engaging to ensure that our message is getting across. The audience that comes to Oshkosh gets it. They appreciate and understand what the military, what the veterans, what the people who sacrificed have done for this country, and appreciate their efforts on our behalf to preserve our freedom.
It is the intention of the AirVenture Oshkosh organizers to create a permanent memorial to veterans and their sacrifices. This week-long salute to veterans at Oshkosh included the dedication of a new exhibit space called Warbird Alley, where historically significant aircraft will be showcased every year. Major funding for Warbird Alley came from a donation from the Scott's Miracle Grow Company. Jim Hagedorn, chairman of the Scott's Company, is a former F-16 pilot, a Warbird owner, and a member of the Warbirds of America.
I wanted to be an airline pilot, really, to be honest. I thought the best way to become an airline pilot was to go to Embry-Riddle and fly cargo in the Air Force and then go work for the airlines. I always wanted a Mustang. You know, I remember when I was at Embry-Riddle always sort of dreaming someday I can have a P-51, and, you know, we've been lucky in life, and the company's done well. You know, it's a very special airplane. It's, I mean, it's been dinged a few times, but that's original metal there. It's one of the few Mustangs that's a real survivor.
These airplanes are national treasures, monuments to the men and women who built, maintained, and flew them, often in harm's way.
I think we look at them not only as monuments, but as living history. It's important to preserve the airplanes, to get them out in front of the public, so that we can tell the stories, so that the younger generation, they don't forget. If private individuals haven't stepped up to the plate to preserve the airplanes, no one else could have. The government couldn't have. Other organizations are taxed for resources. But we give our hats off and our thanks to those that have preserved the airplanes and really spent a lot of time and effort and money to make it happen.
At the north end of Scott's Warbird Alley is a very special place, the Eagle Plaza, and at its center, a monument that pays tribute to all who served in America's armed forces.
The monument is meant to be a gathering point. It is the point between Warbird headquarters and Scott's Warbird Alley. And so it's a place where people stop and you see the dedication to those that serve. You see the key words of honor, duty, country. It has it all there. And within the context of the different services that have represented this country on a global basis.
What happens here is super important. And so to help them put some money into building up this area, which for a lot of people who come here, they want to come to the Warbird area. You know, if you talk to people who come here, mostly they believe big time in America, people who come to Oshkosh. And so it's a great group of people, and to give them an opportunity to salute the flag and veterans is important. And we're just happy to help.
It was a milestone year for another flying immortal as well, the 75th anniversary of the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. 4 of the mighty bombers came to Oshkosh to join the salute to veterans. And what better celebrants than 2 comrades in arms who flew the bombers over war-torn Europe nearly 70 years ago. In 1934, the U.S. Army Air Corps announced a competition for a multi-engine heavy bomber to replace its aging fleet of biplane bombers. The Boeing Aircraft Company entered the competition with the Model 299, which first flew on 28 July 1935. It was a make-or-break effort for the struggling aircraft company. Despite some tough competition, Boeing's Model 299 won the contract. Early B-17s were built in small numbers and used mainly for promotional flights, including several that set coast-to-coast speed records. After December 1941, when the United States entered World War II, B-17 production increased rapidly with constant improvements and refinements. When the Model 299 was first unveiled in 1934, a newspaper reporter noticed its multiple machine guns and said, "Why, it's like a flying fortress." Boeing liked the name, and so did the public. The Army Air Corps' other heavy bomber, the B-24 Liberator, built by Consolidated Aircraft Corporation, was faster, carried a larger bomb load, and was built in greater numbers than the Boeing B-17. But for the public and for many in the military, it was the flying fortress that best symbolized American air power and military might. The B-17's sleek and graceful design helped win the hearts of the public. It was also known for its ability to absorb battle damage and still bring its crews home. In all, nearly 13,000 B-17s were built during World War II. Today, about 50 survive, and only 15 are actively flying. 4 of those 15 airworthy survivors came to Oshkosh to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the B-17 and to join in the salute to veterans. For former B-17 navigators Don Casey and Jack Sinise, Oshkosh was not just a reunion of 2 old friends and comrades in arms. It also reunited them with the B-17.
On our 5th mission, we hadn't had a lot of problems before that. 5th mission, sitting here, bombardier sitting up where Scott is. All of a sudden I hear plop. And look, the bombardier comes flying off his seat and landed right here on his back. I didn't know what happened to him, you know. What happened was a piece of flak come through the plastic and it made that sound, plock. And the bombardier's name was Charlie. Charlie, you know, he'd laying there. He said, "Okay, I think I'm all right. But I mean, that was kind of like, then I knew they were shooting at us. You know, that the little things when I just look at that, I just remember that again. And that sound, I never forget that sound. Plock. I remembered that.
A World War II airfield encampment recreated at Oshkosh brought back memories still vivid after more than 65 years. Younger aviation enthusiasts were eager to hear about the veterans' experience.
You had to bail out, yes.
I had to bail out, yes.
You did, not me.
No, I took his place, actually, that day.
Oh, really?
But yeah. So I finally forgave him after all these years for letting me
I
take
wasn't
his
there
place.
that day.
No, I was in the Great Escape Camp for 6 months, and then they moved us to another camp, and finally liberated by General Patton. I saw him in person.
So this kind of brings back some memories, seeing this stuff.
And look at the chest pack parachute here.
Yep.
You know, when I wore the chest pack for a long time. Then I had this one mission where we got shot up and dropped out of the formation. And when I got back from that mission, I said, no more chest pack. I don't want to be looking around, where the hell is it?
Did you get a
so
seat
I
back
got a backpack.
Or backpack?
So I changed my parachute, and I wore it in and out. From then, every mission I wore the parachute and my armored flak vest from takeoff to landing.
For Jack and Don, the climax was a flight on Thunderbird, a beautifully restored aircraft painted in the colors of a B-17 that flew 112 bombing missions in Europe. It takes dedication, hours of hard work, and eye-watering amounts of money to maintain and fly this old warbird. The Lone Star Flight Museum of Galveston, Texas, keeps her flying as a living memorial to the men and women of the 8th Air Force in World War II.
I haven't been up in that thing since 1944.
Well,
It's looking pretty good, isn't it?
yes. I'm still amazed that these things still fly.
For this trip, they chose the relative comfort of the radio compartment located behind the bomb bay.
Look at that. They didn't have insulation at that time. I mean, you said the bare metal. And everything rattled. You couldn't hear yourself think. And it was cold. Because it was something like this.
The bomb bay looks very small.
I know, it doesn't.
You can see all the way up to the flight deck there, too, right?
Yeah.
This is really something. Really something. Get on the plane again. 66 years later. I can't believe it. Here we go, Jack. I can't believe it, Jack. I can't believe it.
You will after we're done. You got to begin it again.
Think of all the times that navigators like Jack and I flew in the nose compartment up ahead, in spite of the fact that that was the most dangerous place on the airplane. When we landed, they brought us in and they debriefed us, and we would say, well, we saw flak over here, we saw fighters at this point, and then they'd give us shots of whiskey to drink to calm us down, because we were still pretty wound up tightly. And so I always had my shot of whiskey, and anybody else that didn't take theirs, I'd drink theirs too. To be a fellow navigator with Jack and to be able to share with him the ground experience there at flying. We weren't the same plane, but at least we came back, we flew missions, we came back from missions, we shared our experiences, and we tried to keep ourselves busy so that we didn't go crazy between missions, because the mission flying was tremendously stressful, and you had to say, well, it's not going to happen to me, I'm going to keep going. And that's the way we survived the war. So when I didn't come back that day, and Jack is there waiting for the crews to come back, and we didn't come back, I'd asked him when I finally got back from the war, Jack, what was on your mind that day when we didn't come back? He said, well, I had to be philosophical about it, and he did.
Somebody comes in the barracks and said, Steve King and the boys got shot down. It isn't that you break down and cry or anything like that, because you've seen it happen, you know, day after day or week after week before, and it happens. But you're just kind of at a loss. But at the same time, you know, well, could have been me.
Jim Sursley arrived home from Vietnam as a triple amputee. From the hospital in Japan, he was transferred to a hospital in Aurora, Colorado.
When I got there and you start to get healthier and you start to eat whole foods and you kind of are aware of what's going on in the world, is where you have time now to sort of think about what's really going on. You know, you might be going to physical therapy or occupational therapy. That's going to take care of the physical needs. The psychological needs you still struggled with. Why did this happen to me? Have I been a bad person somewhere in my life? Is this a path that God chose for me? And I'll be honest with you, I struggled with that for probably 5 or 6 weeks. I prayed a lot, but I was praying for all the wrong things. I was praying for that burning bush or that bolt of lightning that was going to show me a vivid picture of what the future had in store for me. That doesn't happen in real life. What I ended up having to do was I surrendered. My prayers to God were ones that said, I'm going to go do my physical therapy, my occupational therapy. I'm going to do everything that the Army requires of me while I'm here in the hospital. And what the future has in store for me, I'm going to leave up to God. And when I did that and I surrendered, life was just much more simple from that day forward. I didn't have to worry about anything. It removed that burden from me to be constantly searching for what's next. What does life have in store for me? And it's amazing. It's like you flipped an electrical switch. The whole world changed from that point going forward.
Back home in Rochester, Minnesota, Sursley pushed himself to stay active. He enrolled in junior college. He helped to form a new chapter of the Disabled American Veterans in Rochester. A job offer took him to Florida, where he eventually built a successful career selling real estate.
I moved to Florida and said, you know what, I need to look up that DAV chapter. There's got to be a couple of them around here in Central Florida. I did that, and I've got 41 years of membership now in the Disabled American Veterans.
Sursley worked for many years as a DAV chapter officer and state officer. He was invited to become a national officer in 1999 and served as national commander of the DAV in 2004-2005 and as chairman of the board of the DAV in 2006. Vietnam veterans came home to an America that was sharply divided, that wanted to forget. Many vets still bear the emotional scars of that homecoming.
But I think one of the positive things that's come out of that is all of us Vietnam-era veterans have swore to one another that we will never let that happen to another group of veterans. And that's why it's such a heartfelt feeling for us to be out there today and be in charge of these veteran service organizations and welcome the young men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and make sure that their service is never forgotten. What we share together is that camaraderie of being veterans. It doesn't make any difference, just like the gentleman today that got on the honor flight, if they're 89 or 90 years of age, or if you're 62 years of age like me from Vietnam, there's a bond that we veterans have that just says, I'm willing to do anything to make life a little bit easier for these guys. I'm always going to reach out and say thank you to them. It doesn't matter what era of service you had. A lot of people ask me, do I regret anything that I've ever done? Do I regret joining the Army? Do I regret volunteering for Vietnam? And I don't. And if I had the opportunity to do it all over again, I wouldn't change one single thing. I'm absolutely proud of everything that I did. I wouldn't change even the being injured because I think it's made me a better person. So all that experience has brought me from where I was then to where I am today, and I think I'm a better person, a better American, and just love of my country would be my message to all of our viewers.
As a nation, we are, it seems, much more aware of the sacrifices of our men and women in arms and appreciative of them than perhaps at any time since World War II. We honor them with holidays, hometown celebrations, medals, citations, and hugs. Still, this Oshkosh tribute was singular. First, it was aviation-centered. 53 years of the event's origins and history dictated that. When you talk to these people who love airplanes, who love to fly, it isn't long before they mention the freedom of flight. They have a shared reverence for the word, as well they and all of us should. When the aviation world decided to show its gratitude to Jim Sursley, Jack Sinise, Don Casey, and the thousands of other veterans who came here, it was as sincere and heartfelt as it gets. It was a case of those who risked it all in defense of liberty being thanked by hundreds of thousands of people who celebrate it daily. On freedom's wings.
Veterans in general, have made great sacrifices for America to guarantee our freedom. But the disabled veterans, the ones that got wounded or disabled in some manner, paid a tremendous price for us in America.
I went to Walter Reed and got to see some of the same folks that had been injured, that had lost legs, and that had horrible injuries as a result of their tours. To tie it all together makes me, it humbles me and makes me so proud to be an American.
I guess I was fairly apprehensive the whole time that I was flying in combat. And I guess there's good reason to feel that way. I'm there to cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm, and therefore they would like to damage me. And I was 25 years old at that time. Top Gun was really a thrill. I must have done well in actual combat because at the time I was just a lieutenant junior grade, which is a first lieutenant in the Air Force. And so I may have been the very first lieutenant junior grade to go through Top Gun. was the dream of a lifetime come true. I had wanted to be an aeronautical engineer and a test pilot just like my dad from the time I was 10 years old. STS-27 was my third launch, and it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget, we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die. To be an airline pilot, there was mandatory age 60 retirement. I was a NASA astronaut until I was 50 years old. And so I looked at the situation, and I had known a number of Southwest airline pilots. And they were just like me. They were flying because they loved to fly. Well, there's a lot of piloting that goes into it, a tremendous amount of piloting that goes into it, because you're going to wind up passing other airplanes. You're going to get in a duel with another airplane that's fairly closely matched. So there's a ton of satisfaction from doing that. And hey, let's just talk about the racing itself. It's fun to fly low, but it's dangerous.
I had 21 missions in. I was on my 22nd. So we went in, and there were no fighters that took off from England. We didn't have any escort. The pilot called it out, about 100 fighters at a time coming through, German fighters. We lost another 60 planes on that mission. Our plane was credited with 4 destroyed aircraft. And I didn't get back. I was shot down, knocked out of formation close to Berlin. I never got to the target, or we didn't. And we eventually got shot down going over Cologne, Germany, and that's where we bailed out and were taken prisoner. All of the crew survived. My name is William Provonsha, and the last name is Provonsha. Provonsha.
And what was your rank in the military?
I was a staff sergeant, aerial gunner, and I was an armor gunner. I grew up, born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, 1922. I went to school there. I went to Wade High School and played on the state champions football team in 1939. And that, I lived out in an area north of Toledo called Point Place, and we were bused to school every day back from 1937 to 1940 when I graduated. At that time was a blocking back, but we're playing in a single wing formation before the I formation took over. During the Prohibition days, we were kind of a gathering point for the mobs out of Detroit, the Purple Gang and so forth, for bootlegging and so forth. It was a kind of a rough town, but good people. Let's say we had Hungarian sections in Birmingham, Toledo, and then Czechs out in Ironville, and then of course we had the Polish and the German up on the hill in Toledo. This was when I was young. I never visited those places until I went to high school. So, well, known for Jeep. Yeah, Willys Overland started there, and that was the main. And of course, I worked for Dana Corporation, or Spicer, just before and during the war until I went into the service. So we were all automotive parts and so forth. We were tied in with Jeep and Chevrolet and General Motors, in fact, Mercury's. I was 17 when I graduated, so I did anything I could. I parked cars for a while, and then I finally got a job with an engineering company making bending pipes and so forth for the oil industry, the refineries over on the east side. And then we developed, we were bending struts for aircraft landing gear. And then I went from there to Dana and worked for them until I went in the war. But in Dana, I was on the bull gang, sweeping and wheelbarrows with cement and so forth, and enlarging the place. I did mostly cleanup work. I enlisted in the Air Force in October of '42. I knew that my draft card was almost in the mail to me, so I ran down and joined the Air Force, picking my main service that I wanted to go into. Army Air Corps.
Army Air Corps.
Yeah. And so I enlisted and sworn in on October the 16th, 1942 at Camp Perry, Ohio. I went from there to Atlantic City for my basic training. I actually stayed in the Hotel Ambassador there while we were learning to drill and march on the boardwalk in the sand on the beach.
Funny.
So they were offering through our tests that if you wanted to get into gunnery, you would be promoted to a sergeant on graduation, which was $50 more a month in pay. So I took that, and I went to Tyndallfield, Florida for my gunnery, and I was in the same class as Clark Gable was in. Down there, I never associated with him because he had an assistant with him. He came in from town, went to school, and went back out. But he did go through gunnery school. Well, I went through gunnery school, and I told you, you got this Tyndallfield, Florida, and I got my sergeant's ratings and my wings in May of '43. And from there, I went to Denver, Colorado to armament school at Lowry Field. I had, I think, 8 weeks of training there in armament, small caliber weapons, turrets, electrical systems, and bomb racks. And I graduated from that. And after those 2 schoolings, all of the graduated schools sent their members to Salt Lake City as a gathering point, and they assigned crews from that point, you know, the flight engineers, assistants, the radio operators, the gunners, the tail, and then
You stayed together with that crew.
then you stayed together with that crew. Then we went to Boise and we got our pilot and co-pilot. Now, my pilot's name was Irving Moore from California, Sherman Oaks, California. He, after the war, was a director of Dynasty on TV. So I never did get to see him in person after, because I was living in Toledo and he's out there. But I did maintain contact with the co-pilot, was Wallace Chappell in Raleigh, North Carolina, and he kept me posted. And but we were assembled into a crew, and then we started training in Boise. We were flying 4 hours of flight, 4 hours of school, and 4 hours of rest around the clock. And we were the last B-17 group to leave Boise, and the 24s came in when we left, and they were one of the pilots and the operations officer was Jimmy Stewart. And you couldn't get to the flight line for the wax. Anyway, we went from there to Spokane, Washington at Geiger Field and continued training on flights and schooling. And then from there to Pendleton, Oregon. And that's where we finished up our training, and we were named the Bowman Provisional Group. And we had, I don't know how many planes, how many pilots, I was never aware of that, but anyway, we all flew together, and we did a lot of gunnery, air to ground and so forth, but what we needed was high altitude flying that we never got. So we went from Pendleton to Grand Island, Nebraska, and there we picked up a new B-17, and we were headed for the war theater in Europe.
In August of 43.
In August of 43, we flew to Bangor, Maine, and stopped there to fuel and get together, and then we went to Gander Bay, Newfoundland. August of 43, we were headed for the European theater of war, and we flew to Bangor, Maine, and fueled up and got rested, and we went to Gander Bay, Newfoundland, which was our takeoff place for England. And we took off from Gander Bay in the evening on August the 31st, one by one. We never flew in formation. You were just one after the other. You flew independently, and you didn't fly probably around 500 to 1,000 feet. But during the crossing, we run into some icing conditions, and of course that used extra fuel, and so we changed altitudes a couple times to try to break the ice loose, which he did, and we flew over Island in the morning at sunrise, and then we went over to Prestwick, and unfortunately it was fogged in at Prestwick, and the pilot couldn't line up with the runway. He tried it several times, but the last time he tried, we hit the earth very hard enough to knock one of the landing gear wheels off. So that told us we couldn't land on the runway. We got the plane up in the air miraculously. It's a wonder we didn't pile in, but he got it up, and we circled out over the bay from Prestwick, and he headed it in toward shore, and we ditched it in the water. And we ended up very near shore. We didn't have to use the life rafts or anything, but we were about waist deep in water. So that's Scratch 1 B-17. And as a result of that, 2 of our crew members refused to fly anymore. So when we finally got to our base in Ridgewell, the 381st bomb, we had a crew of 8. We lost 2, and no plane. Of course, they took the plane at Bovington anyway, and they modify it for combat, and then they send them out from there to the different airfields. So, but anyway, we were short 2 people when we got to Ridgewell, our 381st bomb. We were assigned to the 532nd Bomb Squadron. We then went to our base in Ridgewell, which is 167 was the number of the base, and it was about 30 miles from Cambridge, south of Cambridge, 70 miles north of London. In Sussex County, there was all the airfields the B-17s were in that area. We had 43 heavy bombardment groups in that one area. And so then we were sent to, the enlisted men were sent up to a place called the Wash for a gunnery school, which was run by the English, and they would bring you up to date on how to conduct how to shoot and so forth, and what the German fighters would do and all that sort of. It was just a refresher course in gunnery, really. And then we went back to the base, and then on October the 14th, 1943, we flew our first mission together, and that was to Schweinfurt at the ball bearing plant, October the 14th, 1943. And that was the first mission that I flew, and we lost 60 bombers that day. Now my pilot, Irving Moore, had flown with another crew 2 other missions before he took his own crew up us. And he went to Acklam and Bremen, and they were in a week's time, we lost 150 17s. And it looked very bleak. Yeah, the tour was 25 missions, if you could make it. And surprisingly, the Memphis Belle finished their 25 before I got over there. But when our crew joined the 381st, there was 50% of the original crew were shot down or gone. And after I flew the first mission, when I started in October, we were down to 80% of the original people were gone. We were all new crews, and from then on it was replacement after replacement flying together. Well, on my first mission, you're green, nobody realizes what you're getting into. But we were flying, fortunately we were supposed to be flying the tail end Charlie, which is the low group, and it's one of the first sections of the bomb group that the Germans attacked, usually. Something happened, you're fighting the weather, everything. It was foggy that day, and it took us a long time to break through the fog, about 10,000 feet before we could join up. And we were late forming up, and in the meantime, a group from the 305th bomb doing the same thing. They tied into our group at the low group position, and our leaders then took us up with the 91st in the high element, and which was an odd looking formation, but that's where we were. And it was fortunate because the 305th lost about 11 planes out of their group. They just got beat terribly. And that was when we realized when we reached the German-French border, you didn't have any escort. They didn't have the range to go any further at that time. And then you were in for it. You could see the German fighters waiting for you. And when the our fighters turned back, they were getting after us. We didn't have the P-51 yet. It was coming in. It got so that in January we had fighter cover all the way through. And then the advent of the belly tanks too. They carried belly tanks, the P-47s and the 38s, all of them carried belly tanks after that. And they could take us further in, which was needed, because if they hadn't, they would have defeated I'm sure they would have defeated us. They had too many planes and we had too few. During that first mission, and the new crew, and we had to change planes because the first one we had, spare parts had a faulty engine, so we had to switch to another one called the Last Straw. Was the name of the old B-17E that we flew. And we flew to Schweinfurt with a half a bomb bay of gas and a half of bombs. And during that mission, we had gun malfunctions, especially up in the nose. And being the armorer, I was required to go up to the nose to get the guns firing again. And in doing so, I took off my parachute harness. And I made that trip twice. And then after we landed and the mission was over, I never took my harness off again. Never. Well, you had to go through the bomb bay and you couldn't get through it with all your flight clothes on, plus your harness. And it was a struggle getting through to get to the nose of the plane. And so I realized then, and we all realized, it's going to be a tough road to hoe to make 25. Some missions, your group calls it a milk run. You don't see any fighters and that flak is not too heavy, but that doesn't mean the other elements of the flight aren't catching hell in the back of you. So to one crew, it's a nice easy run, just a little flak and then you're back. And the other ones, it's a bad situation and they lose a lot of planes. Oh, we flew our missions to all the German places and France, but on January the 4th in 1944, we took off for Kiel, Germany. And what I remember this is because we had a crew that we knew very well in our barracks and we lived with them for a while. They had 24 missions they were finishing up. They took off in our plane and they crashed outside the airport, the airfield, and they all were killed. And I always sticks in my mind that they were almost done. They were ready to go home and it didn't happen. And that was Lieutenant Clor's crew. 13th mission was on January the 11th, and that was to Oschersleben, which is very close, about 90 miles from Berlin. And on that day, we're getting back to the weather you have to fight that. The weather was very heavy and down deep, and Doolittle was then in charge since January, and he, for whatever reason, they called the 3 of the divisions back because the weather was so bad they were afraid they wouldn't be able to find their fields when they got back. But we were leading the bomb mission, and we were almost about 100 miles from the target, so we never got the message for some reason or other. So we went in, and there were no fighters that took off from England. We didn't have any escort. And we had the pilot called it out, about 100 fighters at a time coming through, German fighters. And we had none except one of the P-51 pilots won the Medal of Honor because he protected a group that he was near with his squadron. Saved the whole group, but we lost another 60 planes on that mission, and our plane was credited with 4 destroyed aircraft, but the one of them come in from the tail and hit us with about 6 or 7 20 millimeters and almost severed the foot off of the right waist gunner standing next to me. And during the fight and so forth, I gave him morphine and sulfa powder and covered him up. And then when it quieted down a little bit, the ball turret gunner, Ed Connors, come up and helped me, and we splinted his leg. And we made it back to base, not to our base, but we landed at a B-24 base. That's as far, we wanted to get down quick. We didn't have much fuel. And the flight surgeon, looking at little Joe Clement with his foot, and so he wrote letters of commendation to my squadron and Colonel Lieber, our commanding officer, and so they I didn't get these the medals of the DFC, and that's until I got home. I didn't know about it, but they presented the medals to my wife in December of '44 at Bear Field in Fort Wayne, and the only time I knew about it after I got home after the war. So yeah, I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with the oak leaf cluster, and then I had 2 oak leaf clusters added to the Air Medal for the enemy aircraft I shot down. Our plane accounted for 4. The group accounted for 18, the most fighters shot down in our group on a mission. And it was due to the fact of the weather, and we didn't have the cover, and we lost 8 planes out of one of our squadrons, and that was almost an empty area in that bomb squadron. Look, it was bad. That was my 13th, and then I flew on, and we went most always into Germany. They weren't, and I might say that Oschersleben raid was the start of Doolittle's attack on the German Luftwaffe, because he turned the P-47s and the 51s loose after they got us to the target. He turned them loose, and they took targets of opportunity and shot down other fighters and strafed and everything. And the intent was to weaken the German Luftwaffe, and that was the start of it. Turn things around, and that was Doolittle's idea that you wouldn't be able to have an invasion if you don't defeat the German Air Force. And that's what we were doing. Other missions were some rough, some not, but we didn't have as much fighter opposition until they briefed us for Berlin. We knew we were going to have to go sooner or later, and the British had been bombing it at night for some time. But we had never been to Berlin, so they started briefing, and I read where the lines to sick call were long, knowing where they were going. Not everybody wanted to go, but as a result of that, I guess, I flew, and I was chosen to fly with another crew, a spare gunner, that one that wasn't going on the flight, with Lieutenant Fastrup. And I didn't know anybody, they're all new. They come in. I had 21 missions in. I was on my 22nd. My original pilot, Irving Moore, was the operations officer at the time. He came to the barracks and said, "Yeah, Provonsha, you're flying with Fastrup this morning." And so you get up and go. And I didn't get back. I was shot down, knocked out of formation close to Berlin. I never got to the target, or we didn't. And we eventually got shot down going over Cologne, Germany, and that's where we bailed out and were taken prisoner. All of the crew survived. Well, the first pass when you're in the original flight going in, we're just starting on the bomb run. We hadn't opened the bomb bay doors yet, but these fighters came through because there was a break in the formation. The formation ahead of us veered off a little bit and left that opening, and fighters went right on through and knocked 3 of our planes out of the formation. That was the key for your defense, to keep everything tight. And they hit our number 3 engine right at the top. You couldn't feather the prop, and we dropped out of formation and went down to a lower level of clouds and tried to get back to England by ourselves. Any stray B-17 is, that's what stragglers, that's what they look for. But I think in this flight to Berlin, they were trying to knock as many bombers out of the formation as they could. They pick up the stragglers later. I think that's why we got as far back as Cologne. So that was about 3 in the afternoon. And when we got another fighter picked us up then and set a number 4 engine on fire. And shortly after that, we got the order to bail. And so we were flying at about 8,500 feet, I think. We were not at altitude, and you couldn't maintain it. Our bomb bay doors were sprung open. We were windmilling a prop, and we're flying just flight speed. And when it got on fire, I was the first one out. We were in heavy flak over Cologne, which is noted for in the Ruhr Valley there. So I delayed my chute opening for a couple thousand feet, and I landed on the factory roof in Cologne. I could see the Rhine River and the cathedral coming down. I didn't want to go that way. Anyway, I landed on the roof and I waited for the military to come up and get me. That was the safest way because the streets down below were filled of civilians, and they were kind of nasty, you know, American Schweinhund, gangster, all that sort of thing. So I stayed up there. So I got safely down with the military, and they took me to the air base close by, and we never got involved with the SS or the Gestapo or anything, which was fortunate.
Yeah.
Yes. And we only stayed at the air base overnight. After I got through with Dulag Luft and the interrogation, then they shipped us to a Memel up on the Baltic Sea in Lithuania. And that was Stalag Luft number 6. And we were there from March until July. And things were kind of rough at the beginning as far as food was concerned. We didn't get any bad treatment by the guards. We were guarded by German Luftwaffe personnel. We weren't guarded by the SS or the regular German army. So we stayed in 6 until July, and the Russians started coming in from the east. And so they had us move out in July. And in order to do that, we had to go to the port of Memel, and they put us on 2 different coal ships. They were old tramp steamers, and the English were in, most of them were in one, and U.S. flyers were in the second one. But you went down on a ladder from the deck of the ship into the hold where the coal was carried, and that's where you were. They just stuffed you down in there, and there was no place, there was no place to sit down or nothing. And we had the metal hump that covers the propeller shaft in the middle. And so my friend and I, John Plotz, my buddy, my POW buddy, we went up the sides and slung our belts and that between the ribs of the ship, and we got up off of the floor. We were in there for 2 days without food and water. You get water, but you had to pay for it in cigarettes and have the guards lower a bucket, and they would put water in, but you had to pay for it with cigarettes. Well, through the Red Cross parcels that we had before we left. So cigarettes were the money in camp. Everything that you wanted to buy, you had to pay for in cigarettes if you wanted. We went west and down into the port of the Schweinemund is what it's called, to Stettin. And from there we were put on trains, but we were shackled together, a couple, two together. They put chains on your hands and a chain on your foot, and then they put you in the 40 by 8 box cars for transportation, and the guards stayed in the front half and we stayed in the other half of the box car. But the shackles were like dime store things. You had a sharp object like a nail, you could hit the spring and unlock them, which we did, but we didn't take them off, we just loosened them up. We were just going to the Schweinemuth, the port there, and then we went south and we went down to Poland in this train, shackled, and we went to Stalag Luft 4. And that was at Gross Techow was the name of the camp. And but before we got to the camp, we got off of the boats and we had to march from the station. We went to a station and we got off there of the train. And then we endured what they call the Heidi Krug run. We had to go 2 miles through the woods to get to the camp. But the commandant of the camp was a bad-natured officer, and he demanded that we run. And of course there were a lot of them that were wounded and couldn't make it. And they had the guards and the dogs lined the way. And luckily I was in good shape, I didn't get bothered, nor did my friend John. But some of them got bayonet stabbed, and dogs bit them and so forth. But it was in the middle of July the 17th. And we finally had the guards would actually, if you had carrying a parcel of your belongings on your back, they would cut it loose and make you drop it and all that. And then they would go through and loot what they could out of it after you're gone. And this camp is where we met Big Stoop. He was a German guard. Well, Big Stoop, he started in 4, he went to the next move in from 6. We moved out in July and we went down to Poland and Gross Techow, and we were there from July to February of 45. And that was the start of the coldest winter they had in Europe for a long time. And we did all right. We finally got food parcels, the Red Cross, and that's what actually saved us, because we're subsisting on what they call ersatz coffee. It's water with roasted acorns, that's coffee, and boiled potatoes, and maybe a soup at night, near the night. So we were losing weight naturally, but when we got the Red Cross parcels, we started picking it up and doing all right. But then the Russians again started coming in, and we could hear their guns, and they moved us out of there. I fortunately got on a train and I headed for Nuremberg. There was another train that took the wounded and they took them to Stalag Luft 1, where the officers were at, I think in Sagan. And so it took us 9 days to get to Nuremberg. You know, luckily we weren't bombed or anything, but there was not room enough to lay down. There were no facilities for toilets or anything like that. And everybody couldn't sit down or lay down at the same time. It was 9 days but it was, the rest of the camp started their march. 80 to 90 day march where they slept out in the open or in barns or whatever. And they had to forage for food and try to bargain with people along the way. And but I fortunately, I went to Nuremberg instead, and that's when in February of '45, and it took us 12 days to get there, or excuse me, 9 days to get to Nuremberg from the old camp of from Nuremberg to up at Stalag Luft 4, and then we split up.
Right.
5 was too many, and so Larry Giles and his 2 guys that I didn't know took off their way, and John and I went together. And later on I found out when Larry stopped in Erie, Michigan and told me that they had been picked up by the soldiers and put back in a column, which was fortunate. They ended up down at Moosburg. And so John and I continued on, and we crossed Autobahns and we walked through towns. We walked by soldiers talking to girls on the roadside at night. Just like we belonged there, and that's the best. Well, they joined the column that was marching south to Austria to Camp 7A, where they were assembling all of the prisoners that were marching. And so they were fortunate enough to be able to get back in the column rather than be shot or something. Yeah. So he made it all right. Unfortunately, about 3 weeks after we talked in Erie, Michigan, when he came through from visiting his sister, he got down to Chattanooga or wherever he lived, and he fell off a stepladder and died as a result of it. But anyway, John and I continued on, and on the 12th day of traveling at night, and we were getting pretty well beat up and tired, but we ended up on the 12th day, we were up on top of a hill, and there was a German entrenchment up there. They had dug trenches and so forth, and we ended up there on top of that hill, and there was a German tank in back of us down in I don't know how far away, but it was firing shells over at the Americans that were approaching, and then the artillery from the US was going back over, and we were under it. And so finally the tank took off. We could hear it. It was close enough we could hear it, and it took off and got out of there, and the artillery stopped. And about that time, we're looking down on this little town, and we saw these vehicles and people, Army personnel down there, and somebody, we could hear them shout, "Put up them goddamn white flags." And so the civilians, the village, had to stick their bed sheets out the window and let them come through. And when we heard that and saw that, we started down the hill, and we got down. They let us come in, and later told us that they almost threw a couple rounds up there because they could see us up there. And we were dressed in what's GI overcoats. They were full-length overcoats, and that was verboten because the Germans had confiscated a lot of U.S. uniforms and infiltrated with them. So anybody with a long coat, you were fair game. But they held up because there's only the 2 of us running down the hill. So we got out of it alive, and then we met one of Patton's 3rd Armored Spearheads there, and I've never been able to get the name perfect that I can remember, but I think it was Troutskirchen, Kirchen meaning church, and that was a town, I think. I never have found it on the map. I never knew anybody that could trace it for me. But we went down in there, and of course they fed us, and we slept overnight in somebody's feather bed in one of the homes. And then John and I took we were playing shotgun. We took some prisoners back to Mannheim, Germany too. And we took them back and dropped them off in the wire back at Mannheim. Then stayed at Mannheim at the airport there for about a week. And I got a ride on a C-47 to Paris, reported in, and the war wasn't over. It was April the 20th or something like that. So they had me hook me up with an intelligence officer, take my story, and try to confirm that I was really a USGI, you know. So the intelligence officer's name was Stone Christopher. He was a captain. He was in the Hotel Francois, and he interrogated me, and I don't know if you got that picture of that escape. That's the proof that I escaped. And what I didn't do when I got to Le Havre, France, shortly after, I should have tried to work my way back to my base in England and presented that stuff to them. So what I have, nobody else has except you, that you copied it. Yeah, and that's a special item that I have to prove that I was a prisoner and that I escaped and I was interviewed, and I have that pass that said I wasn't identified. And things are coming to an end, and I was in Camp Lucky strike, and probably one of the first POWs that come out, not one of the first, but some of the first that come out of Germany on an escape that weren't repatriated or released. And they weren't prepared to feed us. You know, we ate some stuff that made us sick and we couldn't take it. And so it was a kind of a trying time there, but you know, you get used to it. Then they put us on the troop ship, USS George Washington, not the USS, but the US troop ship George Washington, and we went to a port in southern England, I think it was Southport for sure. And from there we took over and started home in convoy. The war wasn't over, and we were traveling with LSTs and all kind of that slow traffic, and we had to go slow because you had to travel with the slowest one. But anyway, it took us 2 weeks to get home, and the war ended when we were in the middle of the Atlantic. They signed it off on May the 8th, 45. And then the nice sight was coming into New York Harbor and the Statue of Liberty. And then I got a 60-day R&R furlough before I had to report back in. Yeah, then we went, I think, Fort Dix, I think. And that's where we were dispersed to go home. Take a 60-day and then come back. Reported in July in Miami Beach. That's where the Air Force had all the hotels for repats and so forth. And take your wife with you, which I had a wife too, I was married. And we went down there and stayed in the Coral Sea. No air conditioning, but we had a pool. And then I went through the same thing as I'm doing here, telling my story. And I think unfortunately everything was destroyed in the fire in '76 in St. Louis. From the middle of the alphabet down, they lost most everything. I don't know if I have anything left or not, but that's the reason these seats that I have are important, because there was never any record made of them. So when I go down to Dayton at the Air Force reunion, which all of the groups are coming to now because they can't support their individually, I'm going to try to straighten some of that stuff up. I want to talk about the chaplain of our group. His name was James Brown, James G. Brown. And he was with the group from Pio, Texas, through to the end of the war. And of course, he ministered to all of the crews. He was non-denominational. And he wrote a book, The 381st Heroes, All Heroes or something. I have the book, but he did a real good job day by day, not from recall, but as it happened. And he actually flew 5 missions, and he got an air medal. Our first commander, Joe Nazaro, was a West Point man, and he wouldn't let him fly. So when we changed group commanders, Colonel Lieber, he let him go, and he flew 5 missions. And he was flying with a group that I bunked with in the same barracks, Lieutenant Wood's crew. And then now, he passed away on Christmas Day, 2007. He was 107. After the war, in Toledo, I left the job in Spicer or Dana Corporation. We made transmissions, parts, and so forth for tanks and Jeeps for Willys Overland and cars, but they quit making cars, but you had some command vehicles. But that was my job before I left. And in order to keep my super seniority in the plant, you had to be back at work before 30 days were up after your discharge. So when I got back, I went right back to work. So Spicer went on strike too, and I kept getting sent home. The plant shutting down, and I got tired of that, and I didn't go back, and I went to other types of work. And finally, I was in security for Continental Aviation in Toledo. And then when I found out that GM had bought the old propeller plant in town, and they were moving in, they're going to build transmissions, I knew that they would be there for the long haul, and so I went and applied and got a job. I was on supervision for about 3 years, and then at the Alexis plant in Toledo. And so after I went there, I got my job on security, and 3 years later I was asked if I would like to try management and be a foreman. Well, I said, I've done everything else, I might as well try that, you know. So I was a plant supervisor on machining departments and assembly for 26.3 years when they wanted to started early out their employees to reduce expenses and costs. And so I dwelled on it and thought about it, and about the 3rd time it came around, I said, yeah, I'm ready to go. And so now I've been retired 35 years from General Motors. I had the air medal and 3 clusters for my missions and 2 clusters for the planes. I had 6 air medals.
battlefront. A battlefront like no other in the long history of mankind's wars. This is an air front. The working day begins, as it will end, with the ground crews, as much a part of the fortress as her wings. If you're a mechanic, you've got your own bomber. You get attached to it. But you know when your ship goes out on a mission, you may never see it again. So you do your work as well as it can be done, perfectly, because you wouldn't want anything to go wrong that would be your fault. Today, the bombs will be taken from these bomb dumps somewhere in England and delivered to specific points in Wilhelmshaven, Germany. To deliver them is the job of the 8th Bomber Command, just a hauling job, yet one of the most difficult and complicated of military operations. General-purpose demolition bombs, impact velocity as high as 750 miles an hour, pierce 5 inches of armor plate, destroy a factory. Briefing at 0800. Pilots, bombardiers, and navigators take their places. The group commander, Colonel Stanley Ray, steps up to the target map, and for the first time you learn where you're going. Sometimes your face turns white when you find out. Sometimes the feeling you won't come back tightens your insides. Not so long ago, you were sitting like this in a college or high school classroom, not listening too hard, perhaps even a little sleepy. But you listen here. And as you listen, you don't have time to think of yourself. Fear fades. You concentrate on the mission, type of formation, assembly point, 0 hour, route to target, weather, enemy fighters, enemy flak, route back home. If forced down in enemy territory, destroy equipment. If taken prisoner, give no information, name, rank, and serial number. That's all. These are the passengers with one-way tickets. And this is the crew of the Memphis Belle, 324th Squadron, 91st Heavy Bombardment Group. Just one plane and one crew in one squadron, in one group, of one wing, of one Air Force, out of 15 United States Army Air Forces. Well, fellas, we've never had an easy ride over there yet. And today won't be any different. No escort except unfriendly. So keep your eyes peeled. Don't get excited and yell when you're talking on the intercom. Save your ammunition and make your shots count. And let me know what goes on back there, Quinlan. Yes, sir. Stay on the ball, gang, and she'll bring us back like she's always done. Okay? Let's go. They have completed 24 missions. In this, the toughest theater of air war. the big league of sky fighting. Their experience is priceless. And so, if the Memphis Belle comes back this afternoon, they will be sent to bring the vital lessons they have learned to thousands of aircrew men in training at home. Home is America. This is a battlefront, like no other in this or any war. No monster armies, no booming cannon. Only the roaring engine sound of the bombers pounding through the quiet English countryside. This is an air front. Memphis Belle leave the Soiland for the 25th time. The friendly soil of England, with its ordered farms and rural hamlets, its country estates surrounded by formal gardens and well-kept parks. These Americans knew only from the classics they had to read in school. The England of the towns and cities, whose people have defended their island's freedom for over 1,000 years. But today, their countryside has changed. Today, their island has been converted into a gigantic bomber field, a super aircraft carrier anchored off the shores of Fortress Europe, with hangars and machine shops, with hundreds of dispersal points, perimeter tracks, and concrete runways. This is England in its 5th year of war. And this is the new battlefront, the air front, from which we seek out the enemy. Not his infantry or his artillery, not his panzer divisions, but the greater menace, the industrial heart of his nation, the foundation on which the Nazi Empire and its armies stand, the power behind the German lust for conquest. The steel mills and refineries, shipyards and submarine pens, factories and munitions plants, pinpoints on the map of Europe which mean rubber, guns, ball bearings, shells, engines, planes, tanks, targets. Targets to be destroyed. And these are the destroyers, each with a belly full of bombs, and 10 men like the crew of the Memphis Belle. Pilot Captain Robert Morgan, industrial engineer from Asheville, North Carolina. He's flown this ship across the Atlantic. The other pilot, Captain Jim Verinis, business administration student at the University of Connecticut. Radio operator and gunner, Sergeant Bob Hansen, construction worker from Spokane, Washington. Navigator, Captain Chuck Layton, chemistry student at Ohio Wesleyan. Engineer and top turret gunner, Sergeant Harold Locke from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Used to be a stevedore. Besides keeping the Belle in order, he covers the sky above. Tail gunner, Sergeant John Quinlan of Yonkers, New York. Clerked for a carpet company, but he quit December 8, 1941. Ball turret gunner, Sergeant Cecil Scott. Firstman for a rubber company in Rahway, New Jersey. Pilot to crew, 10,000, put on oxygen. They're climbing higher now, 300 feet a minute. The strain on the planes and on the men is mounting. The rest of the crew. Bombardier Captain Vincent Evans operated a fleet of trucks in Fort Worth, Texas. Waist gunners. On the right, Sergeant Bill Winchell, chemist for a paint company in Chicago. And on the left, Sergeant Tony Nastal, used to repair washing machines in Detroit when he was a kid. Now he's 19 and has 2 Nazi fighters, confirmed. It takes all of a pilot's strength to keep a 30-ton fortress in tight formation. But the formation is the bomber's best defense against enemy fighters. The planes are deployed to uncover every gun, stepped up and down, echelon to the right and left, arranged to overcome the danger of gunners firing into friendly ships, arranged so concentrated cones of fire from the caliber 50 machine guns cover the sky for 1,000 yards in every direction. The friendly coast of England slips by below. It doesn't look like much now, but in a few hours when you come back, if you come back, this will be the most beautiful view in the world. Higher and higher, climbing to reach your best operational altitude, 25,000 feet, 5 miles straight up. So high you can't be seen from the ground with a naked eye. So high that after 1 minute without oxygen, you lose consciousness. After 20 minutes, you're dead. From now to the target, you go about your routine duties, plot your course, check your equipment, and wait, and think. Higher and colder. Temperature 40 degrees, below zero. Take off your glove and you loosen fingers. You look out at the strange world beyond, reflections in plexiglass, like nothing you ever saw before, outside of a dream. Higher and higher into the lightless stratosphere, until the exhaust of the engines mixing with the cold, thin air condenses and streams the heavens with vapor trails. To the men in the ships, they're far from beautiful, for they point like beckoning fingers to the formation, signposts in the sky for the enemy to spot us. For these bombers to accomplish their mission, a plan is needed. Carefully worked out, timed to the minute. The job is to bomb Wilhelmshaven effectively and economically. The enemy is strong, skillful, determined to stop us. Here are his defenses. Aerodromes, well dispersed. Each plane indicates a stopo, or squadron of fighters. Heavy anti-aircraft, highly trained and accurate, all along the coast and defending his vital installations. Radar to warn him of our coming. Here is our plan to divide his defenses and weaken his opposition. At 1330 hours, shortly after takeoff, 6 groups of planes will be heading toward the enemy coast from 6 directions. The Blue Force, 100 B-24 Liberator 4-engine bombers. The White Force, 300 B-17 Flying Fortresses. The Green Force, 300 B-17s with an escort of 6 squadrons of P-47 Thunderbolts. A force of B-26 Marauders, twin-engine medium bombers with 6 squadrons of RAF Spitfires escorting, almost 1,000 planes and over 8,000 men in the air. The enemy alerts all his airdromes. But which is our main force? What are our targets? Where should the Nazi controllers send their fighters? It's our job to make them guess, and guess wrong. A half hour later, at 1400 hours, the Blue Force will be heading east across the North Sea with the White Force following. These enemy fighters are tied down, waiting to meet them, and will not be able to attack the Green Force. These fighters must come up to attack the Green Force, and thus will be no threat to the Blue and White Forces. The B-26s and Spitfires will bomb and strafe a key rail junction, diverting these 6 Staffeln and preventing the enemy from concentrating too many fighters on the Green Force, which is scheduled to bomb an aircraft factory at Hanover. At 1430 hours, the Blue Force will threaten this entire coastal area of northwestern Germany. Which target will it be? Flensburg? The Kiel Canal? Or will it turn suddenly and bomb Hamburg, Wegesack, or Emden? Actually, it carries no bombs at all. It's a decoy and keeps the fighters from the northern area busy while the White Force, the main effort, heads for the submarine pens of Wilhelmshaven. At 1500 hours, while the White Force is over its target, only a fraction of the available German fighter strength of the area can intercept it. Because of the Blue Force diversion and the simultaneous bombing of Hanover by the Green Force. This is the plan of battle for today, drawn up by the Combined Operations Planning Committee and approved by the Commanding General. The White Force, lead group, low squadron. We've crossed the invisible line of enemy radar. The Hun is expecting us. Steel helmets go on. Watchful eyes strain. Tight formations are held tighter still. Tense gunners more alert because here it comes. The enemy coast. From up here, it looks the same as any other. Houses, roads, green fields, factories, waterways. But they are the houses and fields of those who invade and oppress. They are the factories and roads of the people who twice in one generation have flooded the world with suffering. Suffering in such quantity as the history of the human race has never known. Brought torment and anguish into countless American homes. Gold stars and telegrams from the War Department. The first flak, just harmless-looking, silent puffs of smoke. Only each puff is a shell exploding, throwing shrapnel around the sky. Exactly the range, accurate flak by radio prediction. 5 miles down, Nazi anti-aircraft batteries have calculated the altitude, speed, and course. Where will the next one hit? You try not to be there. The docks and submarine pens of Wilhelmshaven. Approach to the target starts. No smoke screen can protect it. Now the enemy knows the path of your approach and walls that path with a flak barrage, but you fly right through it. Flak so thick you can get out and walk on it. Morgan changes course every 15 seconds. Evasive action to confuse the flak batteries. Bomb sight set for correct altitude and speed. Bomb bay doors open. The bombing run begins. Pilot to bombardier. Okay, Vin, you've got it. Now Evans flies the Memphis Belle, controlling it through the bomb sight. And now we are most vulnerable. Committed to our bombing run, we can't dodge flak or fighters. Here's the first. turret fires at him. Evans must ignore the battle. Crosshairs lined up on target. Adjustments for wind drift made. 2 more fighters diving from 9 o'clock. Flak now has the range too. They've hit this fort, but he keeps on his bombing run. As lead bombardier, Evans's aim must be good. Every other ship in the group will drop its bombs when he drops his. Now one pointer on the bomb site moves toward another stationary pointer. The instant they touch, bombs will release. They touch. Bombs away. Half of the mission is over, the easy half. Now to get home. The flak stops. That means fighters out there somewhere. A staffel lurking behind that cloud, or hiding up in the sun where the glare blinds you, and you can't see them, waiting to dive down on you. Fighters at 6 o'clock. This is what a gunner sees. A speck in the sky. That's a fighter. And then a blink. That means he's firing at you. 2,300 rounds a minute. In a running battle, one of the most important instruments is the interphone.
There's 4 of them. 1 o'clock high.
They're coming around. Watch.
Fighters 6 o'clock up, coming in, diving out, Chief.
B-17 in trouble out at 2 o'clock, watching.
Got an engine on fire.
There's 2 more diving through the 94th.
3 planes, 9 o'clock, coming around. Keep your eye on them, boy.
Coming around to 10.
Watch them, Chuck. Keep your eyes open.
Yeah. They're breaking at 11. Breaking at 11.
I got them.
I got those 2 at 2 o'clock.
Watch them, Scotty. I got my sights on them.
Check that B-17, Chuck. 3 o'clock. Motor smoking. Fighters 10:30 coming around.
Those 10:30 upper or lower? B-17 out of control at 3 o'clock.
Come on, you guys. Get out of that plane. Bail out.
There's one. He come out of the bomb bay.
Yeah, I see him.
There's a tail gunner coming out.
Watch out for fighters. Keep your eye on them, Bill.
See any parachutes, Quinlan?
No parachutes. Black at 9 o'clock.
8 men still in that B-17.
Come on.
Get out of there.
There's 3 more shoots.
Flak, 11 o'clock.
Fighters, 6 o'clock.
ME-109 at 3 o'clock.
Keep after him, Winchell.
I see him. I'm on him. Come on, you.
I got him. Quinlan, confirm that fighter.
He got him, Chief. Look, he's bailing out.
Don't yell on that intercom. Fighters, 10 o'clock.
Watch those 2 at 12, Ben. They're coming in.
They're coming in, Scotty.
Get that ball turret on him. Save the ammunition as much as possible.
altitude, drifting into the black, alone and helpless, a straggler. In a minute, Nazi fighters will swarm in like buzzards for the kill. You can watch, but you can't go down to help. You keep your formation.
Here, too, the mission is being flown. None the less real for being in the minds and hearts of these men behind. Ask anybody who's been to a field in England, or anywhere else our bombers are based, and he'll tell you that there's drama here, too. Waiting to see who's coming back. To watch them, you might not realize how tense these ground crews are. But they are tense, and plenty worried. In Air Force talk, this waiting is known as sweating a mission. These men know the flight plan. Their watches told them when the bombers were running into enemy flak, when they were over the target, when they left the enemy coast. And now their watches tell them the bombers should be nearing the field. Every ear strains for the first sound of the engines. And then somebody hears them. And somebody sees the first faint specks in the distant sky. Every face turns to see and count. The watchers try to read the numbers on the ships. These planes have priority to land first. The colored flares mean wounded aboard. In the hospital window, these watching men know what that means. They know what it feels like to lie on a bouncing fortress floor for hundreds of miles through the frozen stratosphere in great pain, with the other men in your crew fighting to keep you alive until they hit the field. The field. Home. It'll be okay then, because there'll be medical care, the best, as soon as the wheels of your plane stop rolling. .20-millimeter cannon shell exploded in his radio compartment. Shock. Internal injuries. He'll be all right, though. Flak burst scattered flying shrapnel. He's full of steel splinters. This pilot's leg is not a pretty sight. Neither are the docks at Wilhelmshaven. These men will all get the Purple Heart. And this man, too, posthumously. A transfusion right in the plane. This gunner's too weak to be moved. The new life-giving blood flowing into his veins might be the blood of a high school girl in Des Moines, a miner in Alabama, a movie star in Hollywood, or it might be your blood. Whosever it is, thanks. 36 planes left this field this morning. Now 6 more arrive. That makes 20 home. And this one's 21. More wounded aboard. .22, coming in with his left inboard engine dead. .23, with a feathered prop on his left outboard engine. .24, Southern Comfort, with a chunk of tail gone. .25, they flew home on their luck. .26, not a scratch. The control tower learns that 2 more landed at a British field to the south. 1 a crash landing, crew safe. That makes 28. 29. A rough landing, but her pilot's badly hurt. It's a wonder he brought her back at all. 29 planes back, so far. 29 out of 36. Our losses were heavy, but the enemy's were far heavier. We destroyed a German aircraft factory, a rail junction, submarine pens, docks, and harbor installations. That's specific, known damage. But who can tell the number of German torpedoes that will not be fired? The number of our convoys that will get through now? The soldiers' and seamen's lives that will be saved? Or the battles that will be won instead of lost because of what these bombers and airmen did today? Pilot and tail gunner. They can laugh now. Fire on the inboard engine did this. Flames streaked back and burned the stabilizer too. Another crew luck brought back. Here's old Bill. A pretty good airplane when it took off. Lost its nose, lost its navigator, bombardier wounded, top turret gunner and pilot hit. Hydraulic system shot out, no brakes, no flaps. But old Bill came back. Now, among the returned crew members, talk flows like a river, talking out every detail of the mission. These are the faces of combat, faces of Americans who have watched their comrades die, faces that can never forget the enemy, and they're in no mood to have their picture taken. In the control tower, Colonel Ray, the group CO, is still watching and waiting. And then he spots the last flight. 3 more planes. And one of them is the ship everyone has been pulling for.
The Memphis Belle. The last few miles of this trip have been a joyride. The strain is over. They can leave their guns now. Now they know they're going to go home. To Spokane, Green Bay, Asheville, Detroit, Chicago, Fort Worth, and Yonkers. The Belle comes in for her landing, but first Morgan buzzes the field, cuts the grass with the giant fortress. It's against the rules, but this is a special occasion. Of the Memphis Belle come back to the soil of England for the 25th time. This is a day they will never forget. Another great day soon after, Brigadier General Hansel visited the field and presented the Distinguished Flying Cross to every member of the crew. And then there was another day. Majesties, the King and Queen of England. Johnny Quinlan never thought anything like this would happen to him when he left Yonkers. The ground crew were a little self-conscious about being dressed in fatigues, but the Queen thought they were very nice. Finally, two more visitors came. General Acre, commanding the 8th Air Force, and General Devers, U.S. commander of the European Theater. The Belle crew received them in flying clothes. As General Acre read the order for their 26th and most important mission, return to America to train new crews and to tell the people what we're doing here, to thank them for their help and support, and tell them to keep it up so we can keep it up, so we can bomb the enemy again and again and again until he has had enough. And then we can all come home. The 8th Air Force, who are now flying deep into Germany, bringing destruction to targets almost 1,000 miles from their bases. Destruction like this. And who have never once been turned back by the enemy.